This one will be norm breaking. Everybody will leave in the first 5 minutes.
Is it one of those?
It's one of those. Yeah, it's a snoozer. That's why I spent all this time on it, was to see how boring I could make it.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out a pin-worthy thing to say so that you might actually pin it. That's a lot of pressure. I didn't realize that was not in the
finish your slides, Doc, right now.
Yeah, we don't like
the slides. That's
all
right. I had slides.
Marcella, go ahead and kill your camera and microphone. All the helpers, please kill your microphones. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us on today's Wild West Hacking Cast. We have guest today, Doc Blackburn. He's going to talk about how Zoom isn't secure, then why is it so insecure? So we're going to talk about that. And then if at any time you have any questions, feel free to ask in Discord or go to webinar. So we have people on both sides answering and responding. We have a goal of responding to 100% of questions and comments. Doesn't mean we always make that goal, but that is our goal. And today, Doc, we're going to turn it over to him. And then if we need to, we'll do some post-show banter at the end to answer any questions that we don't get a chance to get to. And thanks for being here. And we'll it's all yours, Doc.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Jason. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I was looking at the states, countries people are attending from. It's absolutely wonderful. I didn't realize it would be that kind of a diverse audience, which is great. So welcome to, what day is this anyway, right? It's just COVID plus a certain number of days. I had to actually put a shirt on today because I was going to be on camera. But welcome. What we're going to do is, since COVID brought out this, everybody needs to be online. They sent all their workers home and said, now you guys all need to work remotely. And people said, well, what do we do to what tools do we have to do this? So they go home with their work laptops, or they're on their personal machines. And then everybody started setting up what sort of video channels? That's right, Zoom. The reason that we're talking about Zoom here is because there's a whole bunch of people out there all of a sudden using Zoom that haven't in the past. So I'm Doc Blackburn. I've been around for a while, 35 plus years in IT. I know I only look 36, right? I started really young. I've got lots of certifications out there. I teach for SANS, but I also do work for Black Hills Information Security. A wonderful group, and so they said, hey, why don't we do a talk on something? And so, Doc, what do you got for a talk? What can you do? And I was one of the things that's always come to mind with me is that people ask about, is this product secure, right? Right now, the X is Zoom. Is X secure? Is Zoom secure? And the answer I always have for them is no, of course it's not secure. We'll talk about why during this talk. But here's the thing, is I also feel bad because I kind of tricked all of you. It says Zoom in the title of the talk, but this talk isn't about Zoom. It is about Zoom. I'm going to talk specifically about Zoom as an application. But I don't want you to, if you take away from this talk just what's wrong with and how we can fix Zoom, you looked at the talk the wrong way. What I want all of you to do is replace Zoom with whatever application it is that you're thinking of, whether it's a device that you buy and put on your network, or it's an application that you install that people use, it's a cloud service, so whatever it is, take Zoom out and put in that other application or that other device, all right? So that's really what we're talking about here. Is X product secure? And the answer is no, but there's so much more to that. But first, regarding Zoom, I am not here to bag on Zoom. I'm not going to talk bad about Zoom. I'm going to point out some things that they did poorly, of course. But that isn't the point of the talk. with Zoom, they've done some things in their past and they've repented for their sins. I'm sorry, that was a bad choice. We didn't mean to do that. But I'm not here just to say that Zoom didn't do things right. Just you take any application, any device, and you're going to see pretty much the same things. And so what I am doing here is I want to bring awareness to a larger problem that we have in the industry itself. But all of a sudden, here we are in the COVID era, and we've got all of these different tools to collaborate, and all of the ones I put here, and I didn't mean to pick favorites. I just had to put somebody up there. These applications they're all being used for different video conferencing or different features that they have, chat and other things in them, and they have a video conferencing component. So I put them up on the screen. Which one's more secure? That one. Do you see which one I'm pointing at? Exactly. That's the wrong question to ask. It isn't a matter of which one's the most secure. It's a matter of, because here's the thing. We don't choose anything for security. Nothing of the tools that you have in your tool belt is about security, which is fine because security isn't even what you do, right? So folks, all of those listening along and all of that, I'm saying security isn't what you do. And this is a group of mostly cybersecurity professionals. And so I'm sorry to burst that bubble for you. But I can prove to you that security isn't what you do because, say, this will happen to you or has happened to you at some point. If it hasn't happened yet, just wait for it. Act surprised when it does, right? But the boss comes to you one day and says, so CJ, are we secure? And CJ is like, no, right? Because that's what Doc just said. And so the boss fires CJ and goes to Jason, hey, Jason, are we secure? And Jason just saw CJ get fired. And Jason says, yes, we're secure. Okay, so that's what the boss wants to hear, right? Now, question for you. What did the boss actually hear? Not what did Jason say, but what did the boss hear? The boss heard when Jason said, yes, we're secure, is the boss heard, oh, good, we're not going to be breached, right? Jason, could you say that your organization would never be breached? Can you actually say that? And Jason most likely would say, if he's smart about it, he'd say, well, no, I can't actually say that. Can anybody guarantee 100% security? Does anybody here, and I'm going to be looking at Discord for the answer on this one. Does anybody have unlimited time and resources to fix all of their security problems? Anybody have unlimited time and resources? I'm not seeing anybody, but seeing no so far. There's a no there. I'm hoping somebody says yes because, not even close to enough. Exactly. Nobody's saying yes, which is a bummer because when somebody says yes, I'm going to say, hey, can I have a job application, right? We'd all want to work there. There's no such thing. And people are not just saying no, they're like not even close, right? So can anyone here, and there's the old adage of, in order to be secure, you have to fix all of your vulnerabilities, right? Because what does the adversary need to find? How many vulnerabilities need to be found by the adversary to compromise you? Just one, right? So you must fix all the things. And so we've got a problem here. We can't be secure. And in fact, it's even worse. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this slide too. Right now, I'm feeling very nostalgic to my son's youth hockey days. My son actually just literally in the last half an hour here left to go to some hockey tryouts. And the first of the season, I know it's June and they're already doing hockey tryouts. Yeah, in fact, these were pushed back a little because of COVID and all of that. They start really early. But I remember when my son was really young, he's like 7 years old. I remember the coaches, they would put the best skaters on offense. Any hockey fans here? Let's get the NHL stuff flowing here, guys. What's your teams? I want to know your teams, even though I may not even know the teams. A lot of people will try to talk hockey to me because my son's been playing since he was 7. He's 18 now. And I'm like, I know nothing about hockey, but I do know one thing, that my son, when he was little, they would put the best skaters on, what do we got, Cactus here? Yeah, that's how you do it. I like it. That's good stuff. You got a shout out for the Penguins and the Avs. Yes, I'm from Denver here. You got Canes and Sharks. Good stuff. All right, so we've got some people. And for those who maybe you are following hockey or anything like that, let's just level set, make sure everybody knows how the game's played, right? So the offense tries to put the puck in the net. The defense tries to stop them, right? And so the offense are the players, they're skating down the ice with the puck to score on the other team. And so when the kids are little, they put the best skaters on offense because then they'll skate past the defenders and then get a free shot on the net, right? That's what they're trying to do. But then I noticed as my son got older, as the teams got older, somebody here is like, I only know soccer. Same effect, actually, the same effect. So as the kids got older, as my son got older, but the coaches didn't put the best skaters on offense anymore. They put the best skaters on defense. Why do you think they put the best skaters on defense now? It's a matter of, in defense, as the kids get older, as they get more sophisticated in their play, and I really regret tempting people to put things on the internet now because now I'm just watching all of these things and it's distracting me. I better turn this off or something silly. I love it. It's good stuff going on there, but I'm distracting myself, right? But so as the kids got more sophisticated, they would put the better skaters on defense because the defender had to anticipate what the offensive player was doing and mirror that offensive player, must stay in front of the offense. And so they would mirror their actions while skating backwards. In defense, in cybersecurity, we are skating backwards, all right? What does that mean? How is it that in cybersecurity we're skating backwards? It's a matter of when the attacker attacks your website, when the attacker goes after your network, do they need to follow your policies and procedures to do so? No, of course not. But must you in defending your network? Absolutely. And so you're skating backwards. Does the adversary, does the attacker have to follow compliance regulations? But just about every industry today has some sort of compliance regulations they need to meet, right? And so does the adversary need to follow compliance when they attack you? No, of course not. But you must, right? So again, you're skating backwards. And some folks are saying, I can't even skate forward. I'm in that category right there, right? It's embarrassing for me. And so I stopped skating with the kids when they were about 12 because they started scaring me. And so do the attackers even need to follow the laws, right? No, they don't need to follow the laws. Must you follow the laws? Can you break the law in defending a network? No, you can't do that, right? So again, skating backwards. And like I said, we have to find all the vulnerabilities. The attacker only needs to find one. And we have that limited amount of, you've been given a bucket of money. I don't know how big your bucket is, but the boss gave you a bucket of money and said, here, secure our network with this bucket of money. And you don't get more money. You just get that bucket, right? So what must you do is you must prioritize what it is that you're fixing. So that's axiom number one that I want everybody to understand. I've got a couple more when we talk about Zoom. So the point that I've got here, and hopefully I've made that, is that security isn't what you do because you cannot guarantee security. What can you do? you're managing your levels of insecurity. All right. That's where I need everybody to be at. So now the question, is Zoom secure? I don't care. That's the wrong question. All right. So yeah, look at that. I'm like on what, slide 4, and I already blew the title up to this talk. It isn't about security. So since we are insecure, we've got this problem. What is it that we're actually trying to do? With all of these products, they're insecure by default. And so what that means is that when you pull something out of the box, you get this brand new security item or this brand new network item or this new application, this new server, you pull it out of the box and it has a bunch of things turned on, right? And so by default, they're sending you the product in an insecure state. Why are they doing this to us, folks? Why do they bother to do that to us? It isn't that they're doing the wrong things. It's you ask them to. You ask them to send it to you insecure. It's like, no, I didn't. Yes, you did. Let me explain this to you, all right? You don't buy things for its security, even your security items. You don't buy them for security. For example, we're talking about Ring video doorbell earlier in banter. I've got a Ring video doorbell. I bought that for the house recently, and it's a security item, right? But did I buy it for security? No, I bought it because it does things. It has features I can use for security. But everything that can be used for evil can be used for good. And the inverse is also true. Everything that can be used for good can be used for evil. So the question becomes, when we're dealing with features that I bought this thing for, and I have lots of features, what does that do to security? Security plummets at that point, right? More features means less security. And so how do I secure something? I turn off features. And so as I turn off features, there's less functionality. There's less that I can do with this thing in order to make it more secure. Everybody good with that? Are we good with the fact that our feature, the things that we get and what we use them for, is inverse of security itself? So again, when you ask the question, is Zoom secure? Well, no, that was never the point. And I'm hearing back, yep, we're good. All right. So default out of the box. When you buy something and it says on the box, I've got Buzz Lightyear here, and it says laser light sounds and says words and things like that. The kid pulls that out of the box there and wants to play with Buzz Lightyear. Does the child need to enable the laser light to use the laser light? No, it's on by default, right? The phrases and sounds, is it are all of those things on by default? Yes, if it's on the box, it is going to be Buzz Lightyear up there. And so if it's on the box, it means it's on by default, right? If you're not using it, you must turn it off. So now let's go to an actual example here in networking where we've got our Wi-Fi, home Wi-Fi. It's got intelligent mesh technology. It has all these features that are on the side of the box, universal plug and play and all of that. And so what do you think the state is of this Wi-Fi router when you take it out of the box? All of those things that it says that it does is already on, right? Are you going to use universal plug and play? If you're not, well, guess what? It's probably still on. And so you actually have to turn off features to make something more secure. Everybody good with that? Does that make sense? All right. So now we've got this paradigm of the features and security. In order to make something more secure, we have to turn those things off. So what I'm going to spend most of the rest of this time is talking about are these items right here: security versus functionality, and then target selection. We're going to talk about the adversary themselves and what they're doing. And everybody's saying makes sense. I got thumbs up. We're good. All right, cool. Because if I haven't convinced you, now's the time to type. I will definitely answer questions about that if you're still not if you're not good with that. And so. But it looks like everybody's happy. We're all good so far. And nobody at Black Hills here is trying to get my attention, so I'll go ahead and continue with confidence. All right.
Rock on.
All right. We're all good? All right.
You're good.
So the reason that we're talking about Zoom is that when COVID hit, Zoom was this nice, quiet little company, just kind of, it ain't the big boys. It's no Teams. It's no GoToMeeting. It's no those others that you saw up there. It's no Skype. That's for sure. It's just little old Zoom. This startup. I remember years ago when I was working for the University of Colorado, Zoom came across my desk as actually a little background. I would manage the risk and compliance team at the University of Colorado, Denver Anschutz Medical Campus. And one of the things that we did on that team was to do application assessments. So somebody at the university would say, we need to use this application and you guys have your review process. Please review it so that we can go ahead and sign that contract, right? And so never heard of Zoom before. This was several years back. I was like, cute little application. And so we start doing our review. I start playing around with it. And I said to myself, this app is really easy to use. It's simple. It just works, right? You click on the link, it brings up the Zoom meeting, and now all of a sudden I'm in the meeting. I didn't have to log into Microsoft or anything like that. So I was like, yes, this is really simple to use. And that's why people use applications. We don't use them for security. We use them because they're easy. And Zoom was cheap and easy to get started and had great features. And so when COVID hit and everybody had to go home and churches were online and schools were online, all of these different institutions and organizations all sending everybody home, and now we need to collaborate through video. And they saw, well, Zoom is really easy to just jump into and use it. Everybody did so when we all had to work from home. So Zoom became that winner because it was just so easy to use and worked great. What was the problem? Zoom had some problems. When we originally did our assessment of Zoom at the university, one of the things that I had immediately noticed, I said, so that link just has this like 9 to 11 digit number. That knowledge of that number gets you into the room. And so we're thinking, well, with Zoom being a small application with not a large user base, I mean, it's not ideal, but we're not seeing an attack vector out there, right? The vulnerability existed, but nobody was attacking it. They weren't in the news for people just guessing those numbers. Well, guess what? You had millions and millions of users on top of that, and all of a sudden we have a problem. And in fact, there's a tool now called ZWarDial that's for Zoom that will automate the process of just guessing numbers. The ZWarDial tool will just guess numbers, and it's got a really decent success rate. It will find you numbers, and about 4% of the numbers that it guesses, it finds a Zoom meeting and then reports that to you. So now the adversary didn't get invited. They just show up. Let's say the adversary is walking through the hotel and there's a wedding going on. They can see the wedding going on. The doors are open and all that. Loud music's playing. People's having fun. They're drinking. And the adversary says, I'm going over there, And so that's what Zoom was with this meeting number. That's what it was all about. It's like the door was open. You can hear the music like, I'm going to go inside there. And so one of the things that Zoom is doing aggressively now to fix that particular problem, because the vulnerability was always there, and the vulnerability is still there today. But what Zoom has done in reaction is they have been aggressively pushing, well, you need to password protect your meeting or have a waiting room. And in fact, Zoom just announced, I believe it was maybe 2 days ago, maybe it was yesterday. My days are mixing together. But it was just a day or two ago that they said all Zoom meetings by default will have to have a password or have a waiting room. The waiting room in Zoom is when you join a Zoom meeting, an organizer has to go to the waiting room and pull you into the room to try to keep people who shouldn't be in there out of there, right? Because one of the things you don't see me mentioning here is, imagine this is Zoom bombing, is what they call it when people are either guessing these numbers, or some of those were publicly known, where they just send the link out to all of their church constituents gets this email, and so it's just out there. Anybody can get a hold of it, or say they put it on their website, on their church website, so anybody that clicks on that link can get in there. And so we still have some problems there. So this problem didn't get fixed. Zoom bombing is still a thing. Zoom is trying to fix those things, but Zoom can make you guys do these things. But if you turn those features off, and you still can, the security isn't on Zoom, it's on you, right? We good there? All right. So with encryption, that was another one. I don't know if you guys heard, Zoom was using AES ECB, the electronic code book. Those into the encryption, you're like, ECB, oh yeah. And it was a 128-bit key. Oh god, yeah, that hurts, right? And so everybody was saying, well, why aren't you using like AES GSM with a 256-bit key? That's the standard today. That's what we should all be using, right? And they just recently, they're coming around and they said, well, yes, we're pushing this out to clients who request it. And now they're getting to the point where they're going to have everybody start doing that. But it was just like, it was one of those things that when Zoom was a small company, and people didn't really need to focus on Zoom security, they got away with that, right? And it was because of the small user base. And so one could argue that Zoom's security, since they were the little player, they were security by obscurity. Why am I going after Zoom users when there's very few of them? There's plenty of other attack surfaces to go after. Now it's becoming, as Zoom gets pushed into the forefront, we're finding all of these vulnerabilities that were there are now a problem because people are exploiting them. Notice with vulnerabilities, you may have heard, threat times vulnerability equals risk. Well, guess what? We always calculate the threat first because I'm not going to fix vulnerabilities to which there's no credible threat. Did the vulnerabilities change for Zoom? No. They're the same vulnerabilities. What's different? It was the threat had evolved. The threat became more of an issue, right? So I got two more items here. Feel free to type in things in the chat. So far, nobody's bothering me with any specifics. Wait, do we have one? You got one, CJ? All right. What do you got?
Well, this is kind of general. So, like, I'm looking at your stuff here about the encryption key, right? Is the encryption key really the big problem? Because here's the stories I've heard. Some school decides to have a big meeting, right? And somebody ends up nude bombing them, right? That doesn't sound like that guy hacked their encryption key. It sounds like they posted the password of the meeting publicly and he shows up.
Exactly. That's what you pointed out. Those first two items, they are discrete, separate items. That guessing the number, it doesn't matter what level of encryption you have if you don't protect the meeting itself. That's a very good point there, CJ. And so The encryption is important. Yes, we want AES GSM 256 and all of that. That's good stuff. But if you post your meeting number and password on your website, that's what I call a stupid human trick. And there's no amount of security you can put in place to stop the stupid human trick.
There's tons of people stopping that. You can't stop stupid. You can't fix stupid.
Can't patch it. And when you do patch it, it just seems to become unpatched, right? The stupid will always become unpatched.
Hey, CJ, I'm right here. You don't have to keep talking about me.
Jason. The other thing is, Doc, so even though they were a small player, I know you've been doing a bunch of research on this lately. Were they having reports? Were they having complaints? Or was it just that it wasn't hitting the press, so they weren't paying it?
It's a matter of press, right? Yeah. They were aware of these problems pretty early on. When we did our assessment with Zoom, we actually gave them certain recommendations to fix. We knew that they wouldn't necessarily fix them. You know, could I have put it out on a blog and outed them? Yeah, maybe I could have, or something like that. But there were bigger fish to fry.
Small potatoes, exactly.
Yeah, awesome. Small potatoes at the time. It's a cute little application. Oh, cute little Zoom, right? Yeah, they doubled in size in the month of March, I believe it was. Literally doubled their user base in March.
I saw some insane numbers for their growth. So
it was
very cool.
Pretty insane. All right, thanks for that question, CJ. Appreciate that. And then, building on CJ's point, one of the other things that Zoom does right now, you can still do this, is your personal meeting ID. That is, they give Doc Blackburn a personal meeting ID, and so I can give anybody that ID anytime, and they can pop in and start talking to me, and they don't have to know a particular number for a particular session. That's like the bad meeting number that never goes away, right? And so you give that to lots of people. Imagine you have a case where you're interviewing people, new applicants for a job over Zoom, and so you give them your personal ID. And then that person unannounced comes back later to hear the team talking about how that interview went, and they could because they're still because that same meeting ID lasts forever. So my recommendation is don't ever use those. It's a bad idea. It's like your office door being open all of the time. And when I mean office door open, it's open to the entire world for anybody to walk in. The other thing that CJ was mentioning, I've spent some time going through all of their settings. And one of the things that I found that was problematic was the fact that there's a default password. So by default, Zoom requires you to have a password, and here's a password. And guess what? For every meeting you set up, it's the same password. And so I create a meeting, and here's this password. I pop that into the email to CJ, but then I'm going to have a meeting with Jason, and I'm going to talk about CJ in that meeting, right? Well, guess what? If I don't change that password, if I keep the default password the same, now CJ could, in theory, go into that meeting with the same password. And what I found interesting was that you had the ability to change the password, but unless you actually did so for every single meeting, the default went back to whatever that original one was, unless you manually changed that one. So that was a big problem there as well. But I just picked 4 things. We're not going to go over all of Zoom's problems. I just wanted to give you guys a sense of what we're looking at. And how many settings are there in Zoom? There's over 100 of them. And when I say 100, I'm not saying checkboxes, yes, no. Those settings will have can have multiple settings below them. So if you enable something that says, well, how do you want to handle this? How do you want to handle that? How do you want to handle that? That wasn't even part of that 100. So that when I did a review on that, took me hours to go through all of them. Is your organization giving this to a security person and asking, hey, spend a few hours going through all of these settings? There's no way that they're going to do that. And a lot of times they give it to the security person and say, here, secure this application. No, wrong question. wrong approach. You bought the tool for a reason. There's something that you're using this tool for, and you know what? The most secure options will break the things that you want to use. So it isn't a matter of selecting the most secure options. You have to actually have a conversation with the business as to what it is that we're using this application for, and then hardening it from there, right? So there's a lot of complexity here, and making it secure can break a lot of things. And so all of a sudden, we have to have a conversation inside of our organization about what this tool is used for, look at these scenarios, and then actually set the feature settings to what makes sense for us. So can I give you a secure, I had just told you I took hours going through that. Could I give you what's most secure for that company, your company? No, because I don't know what your company does to use this tool. And there's lots of different ways it could be configured. If there's 100 security settings there, imagine, picking, they talk about the NCAA March Madness where you got 64 teams and the infinite number of possibilities that could go. Well, here's 100 of them. What's right for your organization isn't going to be right for somebody else. So that's a big challenge there. But what are we going to do about this then? Those are the problems. How do we solve these things? I've got 4 things that to solve this dilemma. And remember, this isn't just about Zoom. This is about all of these different areas. What do we do to secure this application in an appropriate fashion? First, like I said, you have to understand those use cases. So you need to know what the uses are and the data that you're going to transmit over, in this particular case, Zoom. Do you have a data classification scheme? So are we looking at, oh, it's highly confidential data. Oh, it's company proprietary. We need to figure out what it is that what type of communication, so we know what level of security that we would like to aspire to in the application itself. You also have to understand the users, like we were just talking about earlier. You can't patch stupid, so we need to make sure to put guardrails in place so that we may not be able to stop people from doing all the stupid things that they do, but we can limit their bad choices, right? And so if you don't want them making a choice, turn that thing off. You also need to understand the attackers. Who are you and what are they going after? Because an attacker has different motivations for different victims, for different targets, right? So an attacker is not trying to compromise a church Zoom meeting for PCI credit card data, right? That's not what they're looking to do. And so understand what the attacks, what types of attackers are trying to hurt your organization so that you can properly defend against that, because then you need to reduce that attack surface by turning those features off, right? So you need to understand the risk inside of your organization. So for those functionalities that you don't need, turn them off. Like we had talked about earlier, by default. Why is Zoom so easy to use? It's simply because it's got a lot of features that are just already on. You didn't have to enable anything. You just click the link and you're in the Zoom meetings. Like, yeah, we're zooming, but you turn those things off that you're not using to reduce that attack surface, right? Also, the conversation was, is Zoom secure? And I said, that's the wrong way of looking at things. Well, that's because your Zoom security settings, your features that are enabled, are just one piece of the bigger picture. Defense in depth needs to be deployed. People are like, oh, God, is Doctor going to talk about defense in depth? Not really. The one thing I want you to assume is on the last bullet point there, you see assume compromise always. And so I call it dartboard security. Put your network map on a dartboard, throw a dart at it. Whatever item that dart hits on your network, assume compromise there and ask yourself, what else protects me? Zoom is the same way. Do not put all of your Zoom security into just securing Zoom. you need to also protect it in other ways, right? So, and then everybody knows patch, patch, patch. And so make sure, and this talk isn't just about Zoom, right? It's about all these different products. And so you patch everything. But by the way, Zoom is making a patch mandatory. We're all supposed to be on what it was like 5.01 or something like that. You had to be on 5 recently. So everybody has to do that now. Why is that? Because the better encryption is there, because the newer security features are there. And so you upgraded, which is a patch, right? So what do we patch? Well, since we have to have the defense in depth approach, not just Zoom, don't just patch Zoom, but patch everything else on your network as well, all of your routers and your firewalls and whatever you got there. And you have to patch often. Make sure it isn't a matter of, is everything patched right now? Are we good, guys? That's not the right question. It's, what is our patching plan to make sure that we're always patching in a timely manner? Because the last one is, you need to patch immediately. The NSA just recently, just last year, came out and said, we are seeing from the moment that something receives a patch, like let's say the Windows operating system, Windows receives a patch, they're seeing the exploits out in the wild less than 48 hours later. Meanwhile, how long are we taking to patch Windows? Oh, it takes 2 weeks. Yeah. It's like, but wait a minute, it takes 2 days for the attacker, and then we patch things in 2 weeks. We're seeing way too many attacks today where adversaries are successfully compromising systems in ways that if that system was fully patched would not have been compromised. And so we need to get better at patching often and patching immediately, right? CJ, I see CJ again there.
I'm commenting. We're not getting a lot of questions. I think you're preaching to the choir, but I get so many people, and I worked in the Intel community, right? And we would never patch our routers because we were a closed network. And their fear of downing the availability of the network was greater than their fear of compromise.
Right.
And I see these companies, and they fear the risk of patching, right? We cannot afford outages. So they've made a risk decision there. And I don't know how to fight it other than they need to come up with a creative patching mechanism, like the whole thing, patch your low priority server, patch your backups, patch something and see if it breaks things.
So CJ just kind of hit on the first point that I made, that security isn't what we do because we're set up to fail almost, huh? So very, very interesting point there, CJ. Here's the issue, is that there are business reasons why certain things are done. What I don't want the business reason to be is that, oh, we got compromised in a way that we were insecure because we hadn't really thought about it, right? And so if you are not going to patch your routers because of, uptime or whatever it is that you're looking at, there's 2 different ways that there's 3 different ways you can solve it. The first is you can ignore it, and that's just not the right answer, right? The second is to actually put resources toward fixing the problem. A lot of organizations are like, well, we can't afford those routers to be down. And so, well, guess what? If you write me a check, I can solve that problem for you. We will get routers in a lab and we'll test all of those things and make sure that it doesn't break anything before we roll it out. But that's going to be expensive. Somebody needs to write a check for that. The third option that you have for organizations that are not going to write the check, you need to document what the risk is. Make it a business decision, because this isn't. Here's the thing: as I was saying, security isn't what we do, and that the reason for that. And I'll go ahead and switch to the last slide here. My takeaways here is that. Oh, and I just lost my point. What was I talking about just before I hit that space button?
Accepting the risk, which is something I always talk about and I worked in accreditation and authorization in the DoD, and the best document we produced was the risk management matrix, which we had to list the hundreds of risks. And then we had to list, what's the vulnerability? What's the threat? What's the mitigation? What's the cost? What's the next step?
Right.
But the last thing was the residual risk. After we've done all these things with AV, we still have a moderate risk. And I want the manager to sign off on that list of risks. Saying,
there it is right
I
there.
accept this risk.
That's it right there. Thank you, CJ. That is the most important thing that we can do. Number 3, after we've reduced the risk as much as we can, we are going to document the residual risk and somebody signs off on it. The person who holds the purse strings is the one to sign off on this because it's a business decision. And now I remember the point I was going to make. Keith Palmgren, a good friend of mine, he says that he's got the 13 absolute truths of cybersecurity. And one of them is that security that gets in the way of the business is wrong, not the business. Because I can secure Zoom for you right now. You guys ready for this? Turn it off. Don't use it. It's secure, right? Is anybody going to attack you using Zoom now? No. But business is not getting done. And so it's always a business decision. It's not a security decision. In fact, security is, remember, we just had this bucket of money. Who gave us that bucket of money? The business did. If you need more money to do these things, then they need to give you a bigger bucket to solve those problems. Otherwise, you document the risks, you hand that to the business owner, the person who's legally responsible for making these decisions. And you say, this is the risk. This is what it would cost to fix that risk. Do you want to do that? And when they say no, you say, that's fine, sign here. And with the Forbes magazine puts out a list of most stressful to least stressful jobs every year. So they've got a bunch of different occupation titles. And the most stressful, the top ones are airline pilot, police, military, doctor, the very high stress fields. Where do you think cybersecurity analysts fell on the continuum of most stressful to least stressful? Cybersecurity analysts was dead last, below librarians and hairdressers. Yes, absolutely. So and if you're like, wait a minute, that's not me. I'm stressed all of the time. I'm dealing with all of these different risk factors. You're either doing the job wrongly or you're doing the wrong job, right? And so figure out which one of those it is. It's likely you're doing the job wrongly. So that's what I've got for you here, folks. I said I'd take about 45 to 50 minutes, and I hit right in the middle of that sweet spot there. And so I'm done saying all the words that I have to say. So again, here's my contact information. You can email me directly. And if I'll just stop talking right there. I got CJ on the screen now, so.
Yeah, so Hawk of the Mist has a great comment in there. So he's an ISM, and congratulations, Hawk of the Mist. I was an ISO and then an ISM, and finally moved on to ISI. And Doc's hitting on a message that I absolutely love. It's cool that you did into this. So I talk to so many security professionals that are so frustrated with management, right? How do I make them do it? They won't do security right. And here's the problem as security professionals. We're like doctors in COVID. For the doctors are like, shut it down, shut it all down, hide under your bed. Because a doctor is a specialist, and his mandate in life, his charter, is to focus on health. And we all know that we won't spend every dime we have on health because we have to buy computer shit. So management is that group. Your focus is security. Here's the thing to do with the risk management matrix. Someone else said, yeah, a lot of management just wants to ignore it. I had a great boss who was an old Navy chief, and he talked to me about the Pearl Harbor file, which is those guys the guys in the radar shop who approved hey, I see a bunch of planes on the screen. And someone said, don't worry about those. Those are just incoming B-17s. All right. In the military, they're happy to crucify people. But if you have the documentation saying, I told you so, and then we got ransomware, but I told you we needed offsite backups, and you get hacked, you're like, I told you, boss. I didn't just tell you on the phone. I didn't just tell you in a meeting. I documented it not just in an email. I have a risk management matrix, which I have done a policy that says we're going to have this, and part of the process is management has 30 days to review and approve of the risk. If they don't, it's an acceptance of the risk. And for the security folks out there, I've talked to guys who they won't buy me intrusion detection system. So I came in last weekend and I downloaded the code and I scrambled around. I bought some hardware myself and I spent 3 weekends working on it and fielding it. And so now we're going to be secure. Wrong answer. Why are you killing yourself? You do not, as the security guys, you don't own the risk. Sleep well at night. Advise these people what to do. Tell them what happens, what your prediction is, your professional opinion of what happens if you don't. And then go to bed like a baby and go skiing or water skiing this weekend. Get out in the sun and enjoy yourself because you've given them your best shot. Doctors don't accept risk for you either. Doctors tell you, well, we can do this, we can do the cancer, we can do the radiation, or we cannot treat it. The patient owns it, and they decide, not the doctor.
Exactly. Very well put there, CJ, and a couple points to that. One, going back to the original question that I asked everyone, are we secure? How do I answer that question? I say to security, that isn't what I'm here for. I'm here to manage our levels of insecurity. So, no, you didn't hire me to secure your stuff. I'm managing your levels of insecurity. Now, CJ also brought up another point that I'd like to unpack a little. He was saying there's multiple people involved, and they all have different goals. They all have different priorities. And that it reminded me of a quote Bruce Schneier made once, where in his book Beyond Fear, I believe it was, he had said that there's not going to be any sort of moment where everybody decides what the risk is and agree on that risk. There's power dynamics within the players themselves. There's competing priorities. And so one of the things that you need to understand is the people themselves inside of your organization and what their concerns are. Like CJ said, there's somebody at the top that needs to make this decision, that owns that decision. We're just advisors, and so we have low stress jobs. You need to understand who those advisors are and what their risk appetite is. And then a lot of people will say, well, that's great, Doc, but we'll end up at an impasse where people, where we want to be and where we actually are just isn't happening and people don't understand. Well, that's when you step in and you bring clarity to it and you use the things that we're talking about here. Sometimes you just have to have that discussion with them of, well, these things have functionality, they have features. That means that's attack surface. And so for us to do our jobs correctly, we need to minimize that attack surface, but understand it will never be at zero. And so very well put there, CJ. I appreciate that.
Well, in your presentation, Doc, is great because it's really a case study, just using Zoom. Like we could use IDS, we can use backup solution. You can sub anything in there. And there's some comments in here. Inigo says he'd love to have that singular focus on security so he can do exactly what we're saying. His stress level's too high. It is stressful trying to keep up. But again, if you're stressing about that risk, you've got to let go of that because you don't own it. The key is, though, you've got to make sure you're doing your part. And part of it is finding that compelling story to tell them. You'll notice that how Black Hills does it, and Sands and everybody else great, is they tell you cool stories that stick with you. You've got to figure out how to tell the story that's going to stick with management. And I can tell you how you do it. These guys understand risk when you talk financial risks, insurance risks, competitive risk. You got to get into that cost benefits with managers. If you're not projecting what a ransomware event could cost you or a data spill, and pull in some relevant industries to show you what actual things have done. When you show them that, so now the problem is that's a lot of work. And you'd like to focus in on finding a new firewall and finding a new encryption algorithm and going through the security settings in Zoom, because those are the things we like. And this soft skills, communicating with management, telling the stories, putting together solid presentations, that's stuff we tend to not like. But everyone here's got that hacker mentality, and you've got to social engineer these managers. You've got to figure out how to be
social engineer. I call it communications. CJ calls it the social engineering, but neither one of us are wrong. Yes, CJ, the most important job when it comes to measuring and communicating risk is, and I feel that we just, as an industry, we haven't gotten there yet. A lot of folks in this presentation today, you guys are hackers. You guys are security professionals, finding the vulnerabilities. Where's that sexy new 0 day and things like that. If I were to make a prediction of what our industry looks like 20, 30, 50 years from now, we aren't going to be we will be beyond this. We are in the Wild West right now of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is only a few decades old. 20, 30, 50 years from now, our jobs will evolve. It will mature into being good communicators. We need to understand risks. We need to be able to communicate risks, and that is one of the things I love. Don't get me wrong; I love all the technical stuff too. But that's what got me into cybersecurity. But then I had quickly realized that we were just chasing our own tails by focusing only on that. And to bring up one other point CJ made. He said, the talk was about Zoom, but it really, insert name here, it can be whatever. Yeah, I admit, I'm going to hang my head in shame that I used Zoom as clickbait to get you guys to join, because that was the hot one today.
It's social engineering, Doc. Nicely done.
I socially engineered everybody, but I admitted it. Second slide, I was like, wait a minute, this really isn't about Zoom, right?
For people out there interested, I have an excellent risk management matrix, pretty simple. NIST has got one. I took mine from NIST originally for how to present that. I think we're about at wrap up, so I expect Jason to magically appear any second now.
That's his cue. Where's he at?
Hey, everybody.
There he is.
Dun, dun, dun. All right, everyone.
There.
Are we done? Any more questions? Any more comments?
Let me see here. I got blank on my slide. That was it. Yep, I'm done.
All right, so the slides have been shared out onto LinkedIn, and they're here inside of Discord. Once we make the recording available, we'll also add the slides to it, so that way, in case you want to come back to it and you want to get this information, you can. Marcello, do you have anything from GoToWebinar?
No, I think most from Discord, yeah. And I think mostly all the people sort of emphasized was the struggle. So I think you really hit the nail on the head there, Doc.
All right. Great. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today on this Wild West Hackin' Cast. We will not be doing post-show banter today. So, Doc, this is where we're going to say goodbye to you. Doc, do you have any final words for today? And this isn't like the old Wild West where, like, you got any final words?
You'll be cool here.
No, thank you everybody for attending. You've got my contact information from the screen there. If you've got any questions regarding this or next steps, I know I just kind of threw a lot at the group there. which to do these things creates a lot of extra effort. But I've experienced a lot of success with them through a lot of different organizations to take this approach. And so I stand behind it, as these are the right conversations we need to have. Other than that, thanks everybody. Appreciate your time and enjoyed putting together this talk. I hope that everybody enjoyed the talk as well. So thank you.
We hope to see you on the next Wild West Hackin Cast. If you are watching the recording, if you look below, you can see a link to the Discord or our upcoming, so you can see the schedule. And with that, we're out. I'm going to end the webinar. See y'all next time.
Bye.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye. Yeah, you know what? What's really, this bothers me. I've got a secret. I don't tell very many people this, but right now I'm the oldest I've ever been.